underachieving. Bradley Beal at $4 million, which would be the minimum, or maybe they can give him the biannual. I'm not sure. Whatever it is, all of a sudden there's a whole different value proposition. But I'm sure there's going to be other people bidding for Bradley Beal. That said, if Bradley Beal had a starting level role sitting there with the Clippers to go to, that would be compelling. And one wonders if the Clippers if they are not uncertain about Bradley Beal's intentions by making this trade, Bontemps.
Yeah, from the moment this trade happened, the only logical thing you could look at was that Bradley Beal would wind up with the Clippers with John Collins, and they would get markedly better as a result, because the Clippers are trying to compete next year. And while John Collins and Norm Powell are similar players, I think, in value, which is why they ended up getting swapped for each other, they aren't similar players in terms of fit. And when you look at this Clippers roster, they right now basically only have James Harden who can do anything with the ball. So Bradley Beal would obviously slot right in there, play a huge role for them. And I think the reason we've been waiting to see where Bradley Beal will go and when this buyout process will start is because there hasn't been any clarity on where he'll land. And I think that's been part of what the holdup has been. And ironically, one of the other places that has been rumored as a place for him to land was Miami. And with Miami getting Norm Powell in this deal, on top of the fact that the Clippers open up this spot at shooting guard, you certainly wouldn't think Miami's an option for Brad Beal anymore either. So all that points to the Clippers winding up with Beal, who I think is a similar player to Norm Powell, and John Collins in the same deal. Pretty good return for that.
Well, it's a great situation for Beal. He's going to have to give back about $14 million on the buyout to make the math work for the Suns. He won't make that up in year one, but I assume it'd probably be like a 1+1, 2-year deal with a player option, that sort of a thing. Have a chance to more than make it up next year and to be put into a situation where he's got a starting role on a competitive team, a team that certainly expects to be back in the playoffs. I think there's some family ties for him in LA. Certainly a lot of NBA players enjoy Los Angeles. And, if he's moving his family, I'm sure there'd be some appeal there. And then John Collins, to me, is really interesting. I'm not sure that he starts. To me, it makes a lot of sense to have him paired with Brook Lopez as often as possible. Lopez obviously is not a role man. He's a guy who at this point in his career, he spends a lot of his offensive possessions spaced about 27 feet from the hoop. John Collins is still one hell of a lob catcher. And, the problem with John Collins in Utah was he was too damn productive last season. I don't even remember all the injuries they came up with to make sure he didn't play. But seriously, they limited him to 40 games last year. He played less than half the schedule. He played in 70+% of their wins. They won. They didn't win a lot, but they won too often with John Collins in the lineup, and he was a reason. Like they had to get rid of him. They couldn't have him on the roster. They might win too much with him.
They got fined for protocols. I can't remember. Was he the reason they got fined, or was that something else?
Come on, dude. They had him. They had Sexton. They had Clarkson. They had Larkin.
Comments. Yeah, it goes back to Austin Aegis' comments a month ago when he got hired, when he said we're not going to manipulate lineups anymore. And people took that as they were going to try to win. What it really was they're not going to stop sitting. They're going to stop sitting guys and just not playing guys who are on the roster. They're going to play young guys and see how it goes. And we've seen over the last month, they moved on from Colin Sexton, they moved on from Jordan Clarkson, now they moved on from John Collins. It's very clear what the motive is.
Okay, so that brings the question.
Guys minutes to play.
Are they going to move on from Lauri Markkanen?
That's the question that you're hearing a lot of. I would say that I don't think it will be immediately, because I don't think that, just logically, selling low on Markkanen doesn't make much sense. I think if they're going to trade Lauri Markkanen, they need him in the lineup and they need him playing well. They need him, showcasing that he's a 7-footer who can do a lot of things in terms of scoring the ball. Last year was a bad year for him. It was obviously a wonky year and in and out of the lineup with all that stuff going on. But I think they can have Lauri Markkanen in the lineup, and they're still going to be the 15th best team in the Western Conference this year.
He also has 4 years and $196 million left on his deal.
Yeah, I think he's got to rebuild his value a bit to get to the place where they would like to turn him into asset wise.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the Jazz have to meet the salary floor.
Sure.
And they have a $27 million trade exception that they're using basically to stay above the salary cap that was created in this. They could use it for a number of different things as the season goes along. They could still use it in free agency if they wanted. But I will say that, while I agree with you that I don't think Markkanen is getting traded in the next few weeks, I know that this is not necessarily what he signed up for. So keep an eye on Markkanen.
I hear you, but did Markkanen think they were going to be good soon? No, I agree with you on the keep your eye on him, though. But I'm not going to sit here and play violin.
I don't
music
think
for
this is what he thought they were going to do. I think that's a fallacy.
Sure
now, he may not be able to do anything about it.
He also made sure he was going to be on the team all last season, too. So, I think
remember he timed it
at least
to where he had
partially willingly signed up for this thing.
Yeah, he had a 1-year no trade clause. But yeah, hey, Larry Markkanen, I think, might have the most games played of anybody now without a playoff appearances in terms of active players. If not, he's right up there. And I think you look at they're very early in a rebuild, and again, they need Ace Bailey to pop because there's none of these other guys have flashed star potential. We'll see if a Cody Williams or one of these other guys might, but they haven't to this point. And they dumped all their vets. They dumped Clarkson. They dumped Sexton. They dumped John Collins, and they for a net of no picks. They attached a pick to Sexton, which I'm confused still. And then they got a pick back for Collins, and then Clarkson was just a buyout. But they cleared it out to where they will be. If it was a 24 and under league, I think I don't know, because their summer league team's not even that good. I was going to say I think they'd be real
Thunder
tough.
might win that one.
Probably by a lot.
The Jazz still have Yusuf Nurkic on their books. Who knows for how long? I would be quite surprised if he finishes the season there. So, all right. Our own Young Masuk confirmed it and followed up that Nikola Jokic and his representatives have informed the Nuggets that he will not be accepting the contract extension that was offered this summer. This is not a stunner because even Josh Kroenke, their governor, said in his season-ending media that he was going to offer it and he wasn't sure that it was actually going to be accepted. He has 3 years left on his contract, but he has an option for the last year. So he's got 2 years left guaranteed with the Nuggets, and he could have done a 2-year extension, basically. There would have been a 3-year extension. You'd opted out and replaced it, but basically there would have been only 2 years of new money. Next year, he can sign for a much larger deal with 3 years of new money. So it's actually kind of 4 years when you look at he'd get paid for this year and then add 3 more. So it kind of made sense that he would not sign this. Like Josh Kroenke said, the team was prepared for it. That said, McMahon, when your franchise player doesn't sign an extension, it is going to stutter you a little bit, especially when the team has had, some fumbles the last couple of years with the roster.
Yeah, and again, not a surprise. It completely makes sense from a financial perspective for Joker to go ahead and wait. Just like it made sense from a financial perspective for De'Aaron Fox to go ahead and wait and not to commit to the Sacramento Kings last summer. Now, we all know how that worked out. Having said that, Joker's got a little bit more playoff equity, championship equity in Denver, I would say, having won a title as opposed to never having won a playoff series like De'Aaron Fox did in Sacramento. And I do think that the Nuggets have done a really good job, despite what Bontemps might want to complain about, improving the supporting cast around Joker. And, hey, Denver is the team that pushed the Thunder to 7 games this year. I think the Thunder win regardless, but Aaron Gordon playing on a ripped hamstring certainly didn't help Dimmer's cause in Game 7. Went out and improved the bench depth from there. So I don't see this as some kind of danger sign for the Nuggets. But you're always more comfortable when you've got your guy locked up as long-term as possible.
Well, what it is going to do is put a whole big spotlight on Denver next season. And, the Nuggets are going to have to show that the moves that they made actually did improve the roster and actually do give them a better chance of going deep in the playoffs. Because, look, for everything that we have said here about, and you guys are correct, and that it didn't, it certainly makes sense why Jokic didn't extend. And it would make sense, and Josh Kroenke himself brought up the fact that he might not. It still doesn't change the fact that he didn't. And for a team that has come under fire, I think fairly, for some of the moves they have made in recent memory, it is going to, I think, put a further magnifying glass on this upcoming season. And if they do lose in the first round or lose in the second round again, and Jonas Valanciunas isn't playable in the playoffs, and Bruce Brown doesn't replicate what he did a couple of years ago, and Tim Hardaway isn't that effective, or the young guys don't step forward or whatever, there are going to become natural questions going into next summer about, all right, well, is Nikola Jokic going to extend now? And if he doesn't,